Hello everyone. I wanted to share with you today a recipe that some of my friends have been asking me about and asking me to share. I'm going to prepare it today using some really basic ingredients that are seasonal and also my new large Pampered Chef baking stone, which I really like very much. Now, you don't have to use a Pampered Chef baking stone. You could use a pizza stone or any kind of baking stone. But I like the pottery kinds that are somewhat unfinished, and I do spray them with a little pan. So the recipe that I'm going to prepare for you today is a polenta pie with cauliflower and spinach. So I have some things already started just to kind of move this video along so that it won't be too long. But the ingredients that you need today are a head of cauliflower cut and rinsed and put into a saute pan with some olive oil, and I seasoned it with salt and pepper and a little bit of thyme and dill, and I tossed that around in the pan, and then I saute the cauliflower. And that is just about done, and I can show it to you here in my pan. I seasoned it, as I said, with some dill and thyme because I love those seasonings and because I especially like dill in summer. And I added onion and garlic to taste. And I just let that saute to get soft but not mushy. I use olive oil. You could also use butter if you prefer that. And salt and pepper to taste as well. I do add a little water also as I'm sauteing it, just so that things don't burn. So you par cook the cauliflower soft but not mushy. The other thing that you need for this ingredient, this recipe, is something like spinach. If you want to add that, you don't have to, but it does add lovely color and also flavor. And this is some beautiful spinach that a friend of mine has grown in her garden, and I'm going to use it today as part of this recipe. It's very beautiful as well as very delicious. I had some last night with some pasta with olive oil and garlic. The next ingredient, and this might be new to some, is polenta, which is essentially a special kind of cornmeal. You can actually use cornmeal as well, but I just buy the version called polenta. It comes in a bag. There's various brands, and you basically follow the directions on the bag. Now, the directions on the bag are to make a more or less creamy polenta. It's 3 cups of water to 1 cup of polenta. And essentially what you do is bring the water to boil, you add a little salt in the water, and then you sprinkle the polenta, the cup of polenta in there, turn off the heat and stir until the polenta is creamy. Because I'm going to use this as a pizza crust and I want it to have a texture that I can manipulate in the pan, I used a little more than 1 cup of polenta. I'd say I used probably 1.5 cups of polenta to 3 cups of water. And then I follow the directions on the package. Bring the water to the boil, add some salt, add in your polenta, turn off the heat, and stir until the polenta is creamy, or in this case, this kind of texture, so that I can manipulate it in my baking stone. The polenta, when it's really hot, is hard to handle, and it's also more creamy. So you let it set and cool a little bit, and then you can manipulate it. So it looks like at this point, my cauliflower is probably at the consistency that it needs to be. It's soft. I can easily break it up with this silicone spatula, but it's by no means mushy. And again, that's olive oil and a little bit of water, salt, pepper, and I used dill and thyme. It's also lovely with oregano or any seasonings that you like, really. You can be as creative as you want. I did also add a little bit of Parmesan cheese to the polenta when it was cooking up. Sometimes I don't do that. Sometimes I just sprinkle it on top once I get the polenta in the baking pan. So, at this point, we are ready to take our baking stone. I'm just going to move my stuff around here a little bit. So here's my baking stone, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this polenta and I'm going to put it in the baking stone. I washed my hands before this video, but I'm going to wash them again because. And so here we go. So I'm just going to take this polenta and I'm going to spread it out in the baking pan to make like pretty much a thin crust. And I have sprayed this baking pan stone with cooking spray, Pam I use, or store brand. So we're just going to take this polenta, and I'll show you this once I get it in here. Just noticing that sometimes you get little parts of the corn plant in your polenta, and you do have to sort those out. That's normal. Polenta, as I said, is essentially cornmeal, and this polenta, the brand I use, this happens to be Red Mills, I think. I do like the flavor of this one. The corn taste does come through subtly, and that makes this different than, say, you know, a pizza with regular wheat flour. So what I'm doing here is I'm essentially kneading the polenta into my baking stone to make a shell for my vegetable topping. And we just gradually work it to the edges. When this is all baked and said and done, it will cut like a pizza, actually. Although I would not recommend using a pizza wheel on any baking stone. I carefully cut this with a knife that I can modulate the pressure I'm putting on my baking stone. And so we just knead this like this. Bring this all out like this. It's actually kind of meditative and therapeutic to work with it, work with the polenta like this. I like kneading. I do bake bread, and I like kneading bread as well. You don't necessarily have to get the ends perfect looking. I kind of leave them a little irregular, and I mean that just gives it a more homemade, rustic feel, I think. We live in a world of so many processed things where things are perfectly symmetric, and sometimes asymmetry, when intentional or left after something is handmade, I think can be kind of nice, especially with certain kinds of food. And polenta certainly is considered a rustic kind of meal. It's very comforting. Does have a fairly high glycemic index, so this probably wouldn't be ideal if you were monitoring your blood sugar strictly. But it certainly is delicious. So I'm bringing this out. I'm going to just wet my hands a little bit so I can manipulate it better. Okay. And then it should look like I'm going to show you in 1 minute. So once you get it all in your pan, it should look like this. The next step is, and this is kind of important because it keeps your polenta from being soggy. You're going to take this baking stone and you're going to put it in a preheated oven at 350 degrees until the polenta starts to feel dry on top, as if the polenta itself is baked. It might even get a little golden brown color. I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to come back with part 2 of the video where we will assemble the polenta pie after this polenta comes out of the oven.